G'day guys and welcome back to another One Piece profile. As you can see from what's in front of us and what you saw on the thumbnail, which is probably why you clicked on the video, we're going to be looking at Black Starter Deck Luffy. A deck that actually does fairly well in like a slower format and is actually really good into decks that like to go tall or have bigger bodies rather than decks that like to go wide. We do have a couple of techs in here to help us with the wider boards. But the biggest struggle for Luffy, Black Luffy, is blue or to some degree yellow. So blue is a struggle because of the return to hand, the return to deck removal that they have access to, which Black does struggle with. And yellow mainly in regards to the secret rare category, the removal that puts things into life. Otherwise, this is doing classic Black things, doing a lot of cost reduction, setting up some blockers that can't be removed, and just can sometimes just be a bit of a pain to play against. But let's have a look at Luffy himself for those of you that don't know. So Luffy from starter deck 8, 5000 power, 5 life leader. The effect is your turn. When a character is KO'd, give up to 1 rested Don card to this leader. So that is not a once per turn. Every time something's KO'd on your turn, you can add a rested Don to Luffy. Sometimes you can get pretty hefty. Otherwise, it is just a 1 or 2 extra Don, making it 6-7 power swing without actually using extra Don, which sometimes just makes the difference between winning and losing. First up, let's have a look at the searches that we're running for the deck. We're just running 4 copies of brand new. So brand new costs you 2, 3000 body, 1000 counter. On play, you look at the top 3, reveal 1 navy, add it to your hand other than brand new, and you trash the rest. So you're finding every card in the deck except for 16 of them, and that does include the secret rare Kuzan. That is a former navy, not a navy, so you can't grab that off the brand new because brand new states a navy card, not a card that contains navy. A brand new does help you dig for those cards that help with your cost reduction or cards that help you with removal depending on which you're missing from your hand. And being a 3k body is not too bad. You're just popping 2 extra Don to be able to swing in at leader. Next, we're going to have a look at the defensive options that we have for the deck. As you know, Black has lots of blockers with some crazy effects. The first we are running is a full playset of Fukuro. So Fukuro costs you 3, is a 3000 body with a 1000 counter. Effect is it can't be KO'd by effects at all, full stop, no matter what point in time, whose turn it is. It is always protected, which is really nice. Is also a CP9, which we'll talk about later on. So it is one of the cards that can't be found off brand new. Next up, we are running a full playset of Barcelino. 4 cost, 5000 body, 1000 counter. Similar effect to Fukuro, except it is only protected from KOing effects on your opponent's turn. So on your turn, if you're swinging in, especially with red, if you run into like a jet pistol or something similar, it can get KO'd then. But otherwise, on your opponent's turn, it is always protected. As well as on your opponent's turn, it also has an extra 1000 power. So it is a 6000 blocker on your opponent's turn. Next up, and rounding off the blockers, we are running 3 copies of Sabo. So Sabo is one of the new ones from OP04. Costs you 5, 6000 body, 1000 counter. Is the blocker, and then on play, none of your characters can be KO'd by effects until the start of your next turn, which is really handy. So it's more so to protect some of your removal cards, your cost reduction cards. The other part of that effect there is you can draw 2 and trash 2 cards on play. Great way to just cycle some dead cards out of your hand, find those missing pieces that you may need. Now, rounding off the defensive cards that we are running in the deck, we're running a full play set of Shockwave. So Shockwave is a counter that costs you 2. Says up to one of your leader or character cards gain 4000 power for the battle, then KO up to one of your opponent's active characters with a cost of 3 or less. So that second part of the effect is really good into things that like to run low. So your Zoro and your Law, really good into them, and we are seeing a lot of them as well. Also really good into those smaller blockers that maybe Whitebeard is playing. The trigger effect is you can KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 less, and it doesn't have to be active or rested there, which also is quite handy sometimes. There's a lot of blockers that are at that 4 cost threshold there, which can be quite nice. Alright, next up we're going to be looking at our cost reduction cards that we're playing in the deck. First of all, we're playing a full play set of Kuzan, the super rare Kuzan. Costs you 4, 5000 body, no counter. On play, you get to draw a card, and then when attacking, you can give one of your opponent's characters -4 cost during the turn. So Kuzan can really help you lower the cost of those bigger bodies to make him easy to KO with some of our other effects. The next cost reduction card they're running is also a 2k counter, which is Suru. So cost you 1, 0 power, the 2k counter as mentioned just before. On play, you give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during the turn. Generally, Suru is just used as a 2k counter, but sometimes you're in a sticky situation, you just need that extra cost reduction. Cost you 1, so nice and cheap to use. And yeah, sometimes it is used for that, but primarily is used as a 2k counter. The last of the cost reduction cards that we are running, there are some bigger ones you say, shouldn't be, it's not the last, but the ones that are going to be used just specifically for cost reduction is Tashigi. So Tashigi costs you 3s, 4,000 power, is also a 2k counter, so sometimes just great to just use as that. It is activate main, you may rest this character, give one of your opponents -2 cost during the turn. So similar effect to Suru, except it's a activate main, which means you can use it multiple times as long as Tashigi survives. Sometimes it just acts as a great pseudo blocker if you activate the effect as well, and your opponent wants to try and clear it so they're not constantly getting a cost reduction going on right there. But between, if you have one of each of these going on, you're reducing something by a cost of 6, which is a fair amount of stuff early game, which makes them real easy to remove. And while we're on here with 2k counters, we'll just quickly go over the last 2k counter that we are running. We're running a full play set of Khalifa, 4 cost 4,000 body. On play, you could draw 2 cards and then trash 2 cards. Then give one of your opponent's characters a -2 cost during the turn. So it does fall into that cost reduction side of things, but is a great card to help replenish your hand, find those missing pieces. Also just great as a 2k counter. Great card overall. Is also a CP9, which we'll once again we'll talk about that in just a moment. Next up, we're going to be talking about our removal cards. So first of all, we're running a full play set of Kaku. So Kaku is a 5 cost 6,000 body, 1,000 counter. On play, you may place 2 cards with CP in their type from your trash to the bottom of your deck in any order to KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. So we have targets for that. Kaku's effect is Kaku himself, and then the Fukuro and the Khalifa, which we've spoken about as well. So 11 targets technically, if you're not including the Kaku that you play out. And Bran, you can also just help you fill up your trash with some CP9 cards as well as using these as counters, these as blockers to fill up your trash so you can make Kaku's effect live. Kaku's effect with a cost 3 or less doesn't seem super big, but if you, as we spoke about, we've got a few cards that reduce cost by 2, which can turn that into KOing something with a cost of 5. You got Kuzan that helps reduce by 4, so you can be doing 7. If you have that 2 cost reduction, you're doing something by 9, which is almost anything in the game there, which is absolutely insane. Next up, we are running 2 copies of Garp from the starter deck 6. So Garp is a 5 cost 6,000 body, same stats there as Kaku, just no counter. The effect is activate main, you may trash 1 card from your hand, rest this character, KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So similar mass as we were talking about with Kaku. If we adding Kuzan in there, that's an 8 cost or less. You have another one of your 2 cost reduction. You're killing anything in the game there, which is absolutely wild. Next up, we are also running 2 copies of Kobe from the new starter deck 8. Kobe costs you 4, 1,000 power, 1,000 counter. Activate main, you arrest this character, KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. So it's basically just like a mini Garp. But the reason why we're running 2 Kobe's is because it doesn't require you to trash a card from your hand to activate the KOing effect. So Kobe is really good into boards that like to go wide. So your Law and your Zoro are really good into them because you can use that effect multiple times without diminishing your hand. Whereas Garp is better for those decks that like to have big bodies out on board because it gives you access to another 2 cost in terms of reduction for your KOing right there. Now, a card that works really well with the Kobe and the Garp as well, especially the Kobe into a red matchup or something that plays red, is the Sabo, which we spoke about before. Sabo on play protects things from KOing effects, so helps protect Kobe, helps protect Garp from things like Jet Pistol, from Fire Fist, those sorts of removal cards there. Next up for our removal stuff, we are running 3 Sakazuki. So Sakazuki is a Costs you 7,000 body, no counter. On play, trash 1 card from your hand. KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So 5 or less is really good into most matchups there. A lot of decks have some key cards that are sitting around that 5 cost. Things like your Marco, things like your Law, things like your Rush Luffy, those sorts of things there, all around that 5 cost. And as we mentioned before, we can pair it with other things. Pair it with the Kuzan, you're doing something with 9, you have one of your cost reduction ones going on there, and you're KOing anything in the game right there with Sakazuki. Next up, we are running 2 Isho. So Isho, a cost 9,000 body. On play effect is if your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hand, trash 2 from your opponent's hand. That effect is really good into decks that like to have a big hand, so Whitebeard or Purple Green Dofi if they've got all their draw power out. Some blue decks like to have a lot of cards in hand. So really good into those matchups right there. The other part of Isho's effect is Don times 1, your turn, all of your opponent's characters get -3 cost. So turns Garp and Kobe into 5 or 7 cost removal right there, which is really nice. And once again, if we pair with other stuff, you're killing bigger stuff. Same story, you've heard it before. The last card that we're running in the deck and rounding off our big boys and our removal is we're running 2 copies of the secret rare Kuzan. So it costs you 10,000 body, no counter. Your turn, give all your opponent's characters -5 cost, and on play you can KO up to one of your opponent's characters with cost of 0. So if he's the only thing you've got out, play it, killing things that are 5 cost or less. If you have your Kuzan, the other Kuzan out, you swing with it, you're KOing something with 9 cost or less on play. And if you have your Tashigi out, you can use Tashigi's effect before you play, and you're KOing anything if you have both the Tashigi and the secret rare, and the super rare, Kuzan out. When you play the secret rare Kuzan out. So as you can see, black does really well with removing some bigger bodies. Part of me does maybe want to run a third one of these, drop one of the Ishos for another Kuzan, or even maybe swap out the Isho for the starter deck Shanks. But the Isho is just really valuable against those matchups that like to have a big hand, especially Whitebeard. Whitebeard's still running around and still going very, very strong. So it's just great to be able to have something to deal with that hand size. Alright, there is the deck in all of its glory. Let us know what you think of it. Let us know if you've been running something similar, or if you do anything different, or if you're just running something completely different for black. Really liking the starter deck Luffy for black right now. But yeah, thank you so much for checking out today's video. Stay beautiful, and we'll see you all in the next one.